What a sight! The Earth was blocking the sun again, as it did every night. These eclipses, as they came to be called, were the cooling and welcome relief from the burning days whose temperatures reached 140 degrees F in the high summer and 115 degrees F in the winter, now often also referred to as the low summer. Spring and autumn had retained their names, their varying temperatures hovering about 125 degrees. It was now just after midnight, the temperature having fallen to 110 degrees F, still stuffy but seeming cooler by 10 degrees or so than the same that would have been in the daytime's direct sun. Still, many were out this night, but paced much slower. On any given daytime of the year, no one but those who had afforded sunsuits could venture into the sunlight for long and live. It wasn't just the heat that slowly killed, but even more quickly, so the radiation coming through the many ozone holes that sealed one's fate, it causing deep and harmful burns that meant eventual doom. People could only creep through the shadows of buildings if they really had to go about, or use their vehicles if they could get to them safely. 3 billion people had died in the last 10 years, as well as most of the medium to large outdoor animals. Even the forests were not safe from the radiation, although one could go out for a very short time if one kept moving. The survivors lived underground, in bunkers and tunnels, trying to avoid the deadly fallout. They had to ration their food and water, and every day was a struggle for survival. But amidst the devastation, there was still hope. Scientists were working tirelessly to find a solution, to reverse the effects of the radiation and restore the world to its former glory. The government had set up research facilities where the brightest minds came together to find answers. They conducted experiments, analyzed data, and searched for any signs of progress. Outside, the world was a wasteland. The once bustling cities were now empty and crumbling. Nature had taken over, reclaiming what was once hers. But deep underground life went on. Families tried to create a sense of normalcy. Children played and laughed, and people held on to the belief that one day things would get better. The survivors had formed communities, supporting each other and sharing resources. They had to rely on each other for everything, from growing food to providing medical care. And as the years went by, a new generation was born. These children had never known the world before the radiation, but they were resilient and determined to make a difference. They were taught about the past, about the mistakes that had led to this catastrophe. They were encouraged to learn from those mistakes and to work towards a better future, and so the survivors persevered. They fought against the odds, never giving up hope. They knew that they were the last hope for humanity, and they were determined to make it count. The world may have been changed forever, but the human spirit remained unbroken. And as long as there was hope, there was a chance for a brighter tomorrow. Space had not been colonized. We were stuck to the planet whose warming was still increasing a lot. There were 5 billion of us left. Desperate ideas were being floated about again that before were shunned but now seemed much more tempting to pursue. Crick, a little cricket, but the smartest creature on Earth, sat on the podium next to the microphone to present the full news of the impending catastrophic pole reversal. As he was also the representative of 50,000 insect species at this conference, Crick carried a lot of weight. Although he was but an ounce himself, he looked out upon the smiling faces, wondering how to gently break the news of the actual truth. Welcome, I bring you to the central purpose of this gathering, the very highlight of it all, the doom of the Earth for sure, soon. The crowd gasped. Spirits plunged, for the Earth had the highest centers of learning and technology. Crick continued. The Mayans were right about ending their calendar with the year 2024, for it is then that the Earth goes into its great bipolar disorder and on into the mania stage. Cries of astonishment swept over the attendees as they cried out in the vein of, "No, it can't be! What will become of us all on Earth and those of us who depend on its grace, wealth, and style?"
The future of the Earth continued. Crick the cricket speaks from the podium. A tear came to the little cricket's eye. "'Tis true that in 2024, on December 20th, Patrick's birthday, that the North and South Poles will be no more, and the East and West Poles will be born. It will be a time of unprecedented upheaval, that perhaps no one can survive but a few bacteria." "Holy Tim's donuts!" exclaimed Graham. "A north-south reversal would have been bad enough. Is there something holy about a donut?" Prof Pat asked. Before Graham could answer, Jenny wondered aloud, is the donut hole really a nothing, and so then does a nothing exist? If I just eat the whole, will I gain weight? Ostino asked. Graham, shocked, said, Ostino, I can't believe you ate the W thing. Crick intervened. We don't have to worry about that philosophical kind of stuff now, and by the way, nothing exists, but it isn't even there to exist. Now we have only a few glorious moments left to live, and in which to figure out a solution. Pandemonium swept the onlookers. Some bedlam, chaos, mayhem, uproar, turmoil, tumult, commotion, confusion, furor, hubbub, rumpus, hullabaloo and hoopla followed. Crick waited calmly for all these moniums to subside, then continued. Perhaps some people and animals could make it through by living on mountaintops, but that would be a really harsh life pulled out of thin air. As for us insects, we could all fit into a spacecraft, but it's the humans that I'm worried about. We can only transport a few thousand of them, however, they'd probably want to bring all their stuff along, and so then there would hardly be any room left. Plus, we still need to find a whole new world containing the right mixture of oxygen and nitrogen. That's it, said Time Particle. We'll go to that fantasy world that I've often showed online with pictures. Crick answered, TP, that world only exists in art. Oh, sighed TP. Well, I'll bring only half of my comic book collection and just half of my wives. The top half or the bottom half? Asked Graham of TP. Okay, guys, said Crick. Let's get serious. Comic books are a necessity. What are we going to do about 2024 on the last day of autumn, before the mother of all winters crashes down upon us? The hail with that ice, Graham replied. I'll build a magnetosphere to float in the atmosphere to house all of us. Crick sighed. That won't work. The magnetic fields will be fluxing all over the place. Not to mention some unmentionables. Underwear? Graham asked. No, said Crick. Category 8 hurricanes, magnitude 12 earthquakes, and 100-foot waves of water all over the place, not to mention increased global warming and continuous fires, which I won't.
The future of the Earth continued. Crick the Cricket is still at the podium. Pasuna suggests to Crick, we could hire that psychic who just won all the lotteries and was banned from entering them. She could tell us if this thing is really going to happen, but not what to do about it. Well, get her on a supersonic plane to join us here. Any other ideas? Graybeard stood up. This is just the natural course of things. There have been 99% extinctions before. The fittest will survive, such as some Eskimos in the Yukon, but they will need refrigerators. No sweat. This is nothing but a pruning of the species. The world is a big bunch of crap now anyway. Okay, everyone, relax, said Crick, for natural means good. We need preservatives, MJA cried out. Any ideas? You could pickle yourself, noted somebody. Melanie reassured everyone, all is just a dream, but it will be an ice-cold freezing one, making us all stiffs. What happens after we die? David wondered. There's a billion-word thread on that question. What's the point of existence? Prophet queried. If it all just goes away. That point is thought to be a singularity. Singularities cause equations to give us infinities, Jenny perked up. That is the correct answer. Crick really wished to calm everyone's nerves. There is an eternal return for, behind the veil being that whichever thrives, the eternal cycle has ever been alive, and well knows how these bubbles to pour of existence in this some universe that rewrites your poem and mine there every verse. You mean, Crick, that our atoms will be reconstituted as other beings that won't exactly be us as we are now? True, but we all live on yester's credit line. In nowhere's midst, now in this life of thine, as of its bowl, our cup of brew was mixed into this state of being that's called the mine. So what? Yet worry you that this cosmos is the last, that the likes of us will become the past, space wondering whither whence we went after the last of us her life has spent. I sure do. The eternal cycle has thus formed trillions of baubles like ours, and will form forevermore the comings and passings of which it ever emits to immerse these universal bubbles blown and burst. I like being alive here, so fear not lest a debit close your account and mine, knowing the like no more. The eternal cycle from its pot has poured zillions of bubbles like ours, and will pour. But they won't be us, when you and I behind the cloak are past, but the long while the next universe shall last, which of our approach and departure knows as might the sea's self heed a pebble cast. That's very poetic, Crick, but we need some ideas for the here and now. Bend over and kiss your ass goodbye.
In the near future, via the great quantum computer projecting, like the one on the Devs show on Hulu, I saw that The exponential curve of the ongoing global warming had begun its rise in earnest back in 2020. There were bigger storms and larger fires all over the world. The Lake Tahoe area was mostly saved from the fires, but its ski chairlifts get charred. The Hoover Dam in the western US held back nothing, its lake having gone dry. People suggested building a water pipeline to the west from the east, for the east had plenty of water from all the remnants of hurricanes that used up all the names from 3 alphabets in 1 year. Congress bickered over it and then killed it. Afghanistan became a safe haven for terrorists to operate from, and the Taliban went back to their old, torturous ways, strictly enforcing the will of Allah. What remained of Haiti from earthquakes was destroyed by a Category 5 hurricane. They had but a few trees and none afterward, and so again the island suffered severe erosion. The hurricane kept right on going and ground Cuba into the ground. Trump got re-elected and still said that global warming was a hoax and defunded all of science. Evangelicals danced in the streets. The COVID Zeta variant virus had evolved to be able to remain alive for 400 feet, and so this became the main concern for a while, drawing resources and attention away from the planet's heat crisis, until all the unvaccinated had died. Booster shots were needed for the rest. Meanwhile, the ice caps had melted and were gone. Greenland became truly green, whose name was but an advertising ploy after not so many had moved to Iceland, but then caught on fire and turned a charcoal color. Iceland had no more ice and so was renamed No Iceland. By 2024, much of the world had been ablaze for years. And recently, a high cyclone, one of so many, had killed 150,000 people in Myanmar, and earthquakes had done in many more in China and elsewhere, as well as did a record number of tornadoes that had continued to sweep across many countries. A tsunami sprung from the Atlantic and washed over Florida, coast to coast. Another one came forth in the Pacific from the deep Marianas Trench, sinking Baja. Mexico City disappeared into a sinkhole. Quebec province was severed from Canada by quakes and floated back towards France, where they had always wanted to be. Africa sunk 2 feet in an hour. The Indian Ocean washed out Sri Lanka and entered the Indian subcontinent.
The world as we knew it was crumbling before our eyes. Natural disasters, environmental devastation, and the consequences of human actions were taking their toll. The earth was in a state of chaos and despair. As the future unfolded, the once mighty landmarks and cities succumbed to the forces of nature. Siberia disappeared beneath a sea of methane gas, intensifying the global warming crisis. Sicily broke away from Italy, Alaska suffered from oil spills, and Gibraltar sank, sealing off the Mediterranean Sea. Tragedies struck across the globe. Morocco was hit by a devastating earthquake, causing the loss of thousands of lives. Heavy rains led to the collapse of dams in Libya, sweeping away 20,000 people into the sea. Germany experienced hailstorms of unprecedented size, while China faced catastrophic flooding. The southern United States was gripped by an unrelenting heatwave, and Lahaina in Maui was reduced to ashes. The destruction continued relentlessly. The iconic LAX airport fractured and plunged into the ocean. The Amazon jungle, already depleted by deforestation, was submerged underwater. Mauna Kea erupted, burying Hilo, Hawaii, and Krakatoa awakened from its slumber. Sumatra vanished beneath the waves, and the San Andreas Fault shifted, transforming what remained of California into a small island. New Orleans was swallowed by the relentless force of water, while Mexico found its new home in Texas. Notre Dame Cathedral crumbled into dust, and the Eiffel Tower finally succumbed to its name and toppled over. Amidst the chaos, political turmoil ensued. President-for-life Trump declared martial law, and the Arizona county recount from 2021 dragged on. Russia experienced violent tremors, leading to the destruction of their nuclear reactors. Japan was submerged, and only the mountains in the Philippines stood as a barrier against the sea. Australia teetered on the brink of splitting in half, while Antarctica sank beneath the surface. The pyramids revealed their ancient secrets as they crumbled, and the Panama Canal closed its gates. Vatican City ceased to exist, and Rome became a waterlogged city. Venice, once a symbol of beauty, was lost to the depths of the sea. The future of the Earth seemed bleak and uncertain. The consequences of our actions had caught up with us, and the world as we knew it was forever changed. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of the fragility of our planet and the urgent need for change. The question remained, Would we learn from our mistakes and work towards a better future? Or would we continue down the path of destruction?
Crick, the smart cricket, is speaking from a podium to a large audience about the end of the world, coming on December 20th, 2024. It was all the beginning of the mother of all near extinctions, one that might erase 99.99% of all life. A 50-mile section of the Alps disappeared, looking as if it were never there. You could see right through the gap. When all of Florida easily went under, being that it was already at sea level, the world really woke up to the end of days. But it was much too late. Every very coastal city in the world had been inundated, for water always finds its way in. Northern Canada, along with its eastern and western sections, was no more. As part of the Great Lake of the North, only the now more temperate interior remained dry, it filling up with more and more people and tropical birds by the day. A small portion of Siberia was quite usable too for a while, only being at 100 degrees, and an iffy part of Argentina was okay. Alaska was gone to its mountains, as were Central and Latin America and most of Mexico. There were no more islands, but 4 if they had high mountains, of course. The heat in the world had become totally unbearable, the temperatures now reaching 140 degrees F sometimes. Crops would no longer grow. A new but rare and expensive form of food pill extended life for some of the rich. Most people really had no place to go. The pace of the disaster was startling, exceeding even the grimmest of predictions by scientists. Australia's population, being mostly coastal, had retreated somewhat to the thin edge between its useless interior and the deep blue sea. The great inland sea reappeared, then evaporated, and then returned. Meteorology had become a fruitless science. Summer was now year-round everywhere. The Great Lakes were enlarging, even with their locks having been closed, for the water runneth over. Resistance was futile, for water was slippery stuff, its tiny hydrogen atoms easily rolling around the oxygen. Various schemes and solutions had been endlessly debated, most of them being as tough on mankind as the heat, the rest of them unattainable. It was all happening much too quickly. The estimates had been way off. Nature was now a dragon, and she had roared and was spewing her fiery breath upon her own fragile planet. Some ever had tried to live in their basements, but the heat still found them. Some dug underground, but the floods came. Eskimos bought refrigerators and air conditioners.
Some ever had tried to live in their basements, but the heat still found them. Some dug underground, but the floods came. Eskimos bought refrigerators and air conditioners. Many near extinctions had happened before, one being only 174,000 years ago, when, at Toba, in northern Sumatra, a supervolcano erupted during an ice age. 6 years of volcanic winter followed this eruption, bringing pre-humans to the very edge of elimination. There were but a few thousand of them left around, since very little light could reach the dusty ground. It took 20,000 years for them to recompose from the cauldron of fire that had almost brewed humanity away. It was from this handful of hardy souls that we modern humans arose. Due to the intense global warming and ice melting that reached a runaway exponential point, such as in calculus, the weather patterns had been greatly altered and were bringing numerous and severe storms every day all over the globe, causing much interior flooding, plus wiping out most of the better crops that still had a chance to grow. Roads and tires had melted. The rate of destruction was becoming astronomical. No one could keep up with it. It was everyone for themselves. Karen had started using a fleet of huge ocean liners to ferry the damned dead across the river Styx. Billions had perished in a matter of a few years more, and there was little government infrastructure working anywhere. Humans were hardly a match for nature gone wild. It could and would only get worse unto the sure end. President Trump Jr. still said that the 2020 election was flawed,